My name is Rachel Hayes. I'm 38 years old and I live in Seattle. I've worked in logistics for nearly 15 years, mostly behind the scenes, making sure that things get where they're supposed to go on time without drawing attention. I guess you could say that describes me too. Quiet, predictable, always moving things along. My life looks stable from the outside: a good job, a modest home, a husband with a bright smile, and a confident handshake. But the center of my world was always my dad. He was the one person who never made me feel like I had to prove anything. After my mom died when I was 20, he stepped into every role: parent, advisor, friend, safe place. He ran a regional transport company, the kind of business built from long nights and small wins, and somehow, even with all that pressure, he never made me feel like a burden. He believed in keeping things simple, honest, and dependable. He was the kind of man who answered his phone every time I called, even when I had nothing to say. I thought losing him would be the hardest thing I'd ever go through, and in many ways it was. But the pain I expected, the ache of missing his voice, the silence at family dinners, the empty seat on holidays, that wasn't the kind of pain that stayed with me. What stayed was something else, something colder, something I never saw coming. It came from someone I trusted, someone I built a life with, and somehow that betrayal hollowed me out in a way grief never could. You think you're ready for loss because you've seen it before, but you can't prepare for the moment you realize the person lying next to you is not mourning with you. They're calculating. Looking back, there were signs. But at the time, I was just a daughter burying her father. I didn't have the energy to question what felt off. I used to think that losing my dad would break me, but it didn't. What broke me was what followed. What broke me was realizing I was surrounded by people who saw loss as an opportunity. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. I met Travis at a supply chain conference in Phoenix. He was one of the speakers, polished and magnetic, the kind of guy who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. We struck up a conversation at the coffee station, and before the end of the weekend, he'd made me laugh more than anyone had in years. He asked thoughtful questions and listened like he cared about every word. At the time, that felt rare. I remember thinking maybe this is what my dad meant when he said the right people don't need convincing. My dad, Tom Hayes, was never one for show. He built his company from a rusted-out pickup and a notebook full of promises. By the time I turned 30, he had over 80 employees and more contracts than he could manage without a second in command. He wanted me to take over eventually. I said no for years. I was content working in the background, and honestly, I didn't think I could ever live up to him. Travis, on the other hand, thought it was a waste. He said I had too much potential to stay invisible. When he proposed, my dad was hesitant, not rude, just watchful. He told me once men like Travis are either brilliant allies or dangerous opportunists. I didn't want to believe it was a warning. I told myself it was just fatherly caution. My best friend Monica adored him. She and I had been inseparable since college, the kind of friendship where you finish each other's sentences. She worked in corporate finance and loved giving advice I didn't ask for. But she was loyal, or at least I used to think so. Monica helped me pick out my wedding dress. She toasted us with too much champagne. She stood beside me at the altar, grinning like she had never been more proud. After the honeymoon life settled into a pattern, Travis traveled often for consulting work. Monica and I grabbed brunch twice a month, and I spent most weekends visiting my dad. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt stable, familiar. When Dad got sick, things started to shift. It wasn't dramatic, just subtle. Monica canceled plans more often. Travis started talking about investments and long-term goals, but not in the way people talk about dreams. It was like he was drafting a business strategy. I was so wrapped up in hospital visits and end-of-life decisions, I didn't have time to pay attention, or maybe I didn't want to. There's comfort in pretending everything's fine when the one person who always made things feel safe is slipping away. The week Dad moved to hospice, Travis asked if I'd thought about how the company would be handled. I remember blinking, not sure what he meant. He said it gently, almost apologetically, but the timing felt strange. Monica offered to help with estate planning. She said it would be smart to loop her in early. Her tone was casual, but there was something beneath it, a kind of urgency I couldn't explain. Looking back, I think that's when the ground beneath me began to shift. Nothing had happened yet, but the silence between words felt different. People don't always betray you with action. Sometimes it starts with what they don't say. The office was quiet when I walked in. Just the faint hum of the air conditioner and the click of the assistant's keyboard. The lawyer, Mr. Denham, stood as I entered, his face unreadable. I had seen him once before years ago when my dad redid his will after mom died. He offered a tight smile, gestured toward a leather chair, and said he was sorry for my loss. I nodded and sat down, not trusting my voice. He didn't ease into it. He opened a folder, laid it flat on the desk, and told me straight. My father had left everything to me: the company, the properties, the accounts. Altogether, the estate was valued at just over $12 million. I stared at the folder. My mouth went dry. I had expected maybe the house, some savings. Nothing like this. I didn't speak for a long time. He waited. When I finally looked up, my voice cracked. I asked why my father hadn't told me. Mr. Denham said he wanted it to be a gesture, not a discussion. A final act of trust. I nodded again, but the room felt far away. I should have felt proud or grateful or something big. But I didn't. I felt small. Empty. I walked out of that office into sunlight I didn't feel. I sat in my car with the papers in my lap, and for the first time in days, I cried. Not just for my dad, for everything I couldn't hold on to. When I finally called Travis, my hands were still shaking. He picked up on the second ring. I told him I had just left the attorney's office. He asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know. I told him my dad left me the company and everything else. There was a long pause, then he asked how much it was worth. I remember the way he said it, not out of concern, not even out of curiosity, just matter of fact like someone checking the weather. I said the number out loud, 12 million. It sounded strange in my own voice. He gave a low whistle. Then he asked if I wanted to celebrate. I said no. I said I needed to go home and lie down. I don't remember hanging up. I just sat there, the phone still in my hand, feeling the edges of something I couldn't name, like something had cracked but hadn't fallen apart yet. That night, I laid out the documents on the dining table. Travis came in, glanced at them, and raised his eyebrows. He asked if it was all real. I said yes. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. There was something behind them I hadn't seen before, a calculation, a shift. He asked what we were going to do with it. He mentioned investing, maybe a lake house. He even said we should talk about how much to give to his sister. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My dad had been in the ground for 5 days, and the man I married was already budgeting grief. The room felt colder than before, or maybe I was just seeing it differently. Either way, something had changed, and I couldn't unsee it. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the paperwork still spread out when Travis said it. He didn't even look up from his phone. He just said we should think about giving some money to his sister Julia. I blinked. I had never met Julia. I didn't even know what state she lived in. All I knew was that she hadn't called when my dad died. Travis said it like it was obvious, like family meant a shared bank account. I asked him why. He said Julia had been through a lot. Divorce, layoffs, 2 kids in college. He said it would mean the world to her. I said no. Soft at first, not angry, just firm. He raised his eyebrows like I had said something inappropriate. He leaned in, lowered his voice, said I was being selfish. That this wasn't just about me, that we should use the money to help people we love. I stared at him. My fingers went numb. I asked him how long he had been thinking like this. He looked confused, maybe even offended. He said he was just trying to be supportive, that I was under stress and not thinking clearly. Then he brought up Monica. He said she had a few ideas too, something about a joint real estate venture, high-yield short-term returns. I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the room suddenly felt like it was spinning. Later that night, Monica came over. She brought wine. She hugged me too long. Then she sat down and folded her hands like she was about to deliver good news. She said she had been thinking, that with the right guidance, I could turn my inheritance into something really impactful. She used words like diversify and scale, but all I heard was take. She wanted to partner on a venture, said she had the contacts and I had the capital. She smiled like it was a compliment. I asked her if she remembered what day it was. She said Tuesday. I said it had been exactly 1 week since my father's funeral. She paused. Then she said he would want me to move forward, to be smart, to honor his legacy. I sat back and watched her talk, her face, her voice. It all looked the same, but it didn't feel like my friend anymore. I asked her if she thought this was the right time. She looked hurt, said she was just trying to help. I nodded. She left soon after, said we'd talk more next week. When the door closed, I stood in the living room alone. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just felt something close off inside me. I looked at the photos on the mantel, my dad shaking hands with a driver. him smiling beside a truck. The only person who had never asked me for anything. The only person who gave because he wanted to, not because he saw something in return. I used to think grief made people kinder. I thought it opened hearts. But it turns out for some people, grief just makes them hungry. The next morning, Travis brought up the vacation again. Said it might be good for me, said Aspen would be quiet this time of year. I said I wasn't going anywhere, not yet. He frowned and said I was shutting him out. I told him I didn't recognize him anymore. He laughed and said I was being dramatic, that it was just money, just numbers. That word stayed with me, just like my father's entire life was a budget line, like my pain was a phase. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake watching the shadows move across the ceiling. I listened to Travis breathing beside me, calm, steady, unbothered. And for the first time in my marriage, I felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. It started with the way Travis looked at the documents. Not like they meant something. Not like they held memories of my father or years of hard work. He looked at them the way someone might look at a car they wanted to buy. The tone in his voice changed too, softer in a way that wasn't warm, more careful like he was walking through a minefield and didn't want to trigger anything too soon. Monica stopped calling me Rachel. She started calling me things like girl and babe. Every sentence came wrapped in flattery. You're so smart. You deserve to make this grow. I knew then she wasn't talking to a friend, she was talking to a bank. I didn't tell them what I was thinking. I didn't say I noticed how Travis kept checking the mail before I did, or how Monica started showing up with real estate brochures tucked behind her laptop. Instead, I changed every password. I pulled the old safe out of my father's closet and had it installed in the guest bedroom. I met with a lawyer who specialized in asset protection and asked what I needed to do. He asked me how bad I thought it could get. I said I didn't know, but I was done waiting to find out. He told me to document everything, so I started keeping a notebook, phone calls, random comments, changes in behavior. I asked about setting up a trust. He explained my options. I didn't flinch at the legal fees. Peace of mind has a price, and I was willing to pay it. I installed cameras in the home office and living room. Quietly, discreetly, Travis didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. I moved a portion of the funds into a separate account. Something harder to trace, something protected under a clause in the estate. I began forwarding emails to a new private server, one only I could access. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I needed to be ready if I found it. The next time Monica came over, she asked to use my office, said she needed to take a quick call. When I checked the footage later, she had spent 5 minutes rummaging through the desk drawers. She never found the safe key. It was taped under the back of an old picture frame in the laundry room. My dad always said if you want to hide something, hide it where no one wants to look. That night, I watched Travis sleep with his hand resting near my side. Not an affection, just a habit. Like someone who had claimed a space so long ago he forgot it ever belonged to someone else. I didn't move, I didn't speak, but I felt something inside me sharpen. I had spent weeks hoping this was a misunderstanding, hoping people I loved were just saying the wrong things out of stress or fear, but I didn't believe that anymore. This wasn't confusion, this was clarity, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Grief had changed the air in my house, but greed had changed the people in it. So I stopped mourning, I started preparing, and I stopped asking if I was being too paranoid. I started asking if I was being paranoid enough. I was going through Travis's laptop one night when I saw it. His email had been left open. Maybe it was arrogance, maybe it was carelessness. Either way, I clicked. The subject line read proxy strategy. It was a thread, a back and forth between Travis and Monica that went back 2 weeks. They weren't subtle. They discussed how to convince me I needed help managing the company, how Travis would push the idea of a shared leadership structure, how Monica would back him up, make it sound normal, even smart. If I handed over proxy rights, they said decisions could be made faster, less pressure on me. They said I'd probably agree as long as they kept things calm and supportive. They wrote it like a business pitch, bullet points, action items, no emotion, just calculation. They didn't talk about the grief or the years I spent building trust with our employees or what the company meant to my father. They talked about me like I was a problem to solve. They said I was tired, distracted, not fit for the scale the company needed. They were planning to replace me with a hired CEO once they had control. I read the emails twice. Then I took screenshots, saved the files to a flash drive, forwarded everything to a private server. No reaction, no yelling, no broken glass. I didn't say a word when Travis walked in and kissed my head. I didn't mention the new email folder I'd created. I didn't let him see that everything had changed. The next day, I went straight to my lawyer. I didn't wait for an appointment. I walked into his office and laid the flash drive on his desk. He plugged it in, clicked through the files, and when he looked up at me, his face was different. He told me I was doing the right thing, that now we had leverage. He called in a colleague from another firm, someone who specialized in corporate defense. They helped me draft a resolution to freeze proxy rights temporarily, just in case anything was attempted behind my back. They explained how power of attorney could be abused. I listened, I took notes, I asked better questions. I was done being the grieving wife with good intentions. I had become the woman who held the keys. Over the next week, I gave nothing away. I played along, I nodded during Travis's business suggestions. I smiled when Monica stopped by with a spreadsheet she wanted me to review. I wasn't pretending to be strong anymore. I was strong. They just hadn't noticed yet. My lawyer helped me contact a private auditor. We began reviewing every transaction linked to the company over the last 6 months. We checked phone records, we flagged anything suspicious. There were more surprises. Monica had already tried to contact two of our senior managers, claimed she was helping me restructure, used phrases that sounded harmless alignment efficiency, but the intent was clear. She thought I wouldn't find out. They both did. They thought I was too emotional, too slow, too soft. But I had been watching, and now I was moving, quietly, sharply. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning freedom. I was reclaiming what they had mistaken as theirs. They saw grief and thought it meant weakness. But grief, when it hardens, turns into something they never saw coming. It turns into resolve. I smiled when Travis handed me coffee. I asked about his day, listened to his plans, even laughed at the part where he said I seemed more relaxed. Inside, I was counting the steps. The audit firm I hired sent me their first findings. Small irregularities, nothing criminal yet, but enough to raise suspicion. Money moved through a consulting arm Monica had quietly set up just outside company oversight. I didn't confront them. I nodded during dinner. I thanked Monica for her help reviewing operations. Then I made notes after they left the room. I met with the two largest minority shareholders, both of whom had worked with my father for decades. I asked about their vision. I didn't mention the emails, I just listened. They told me Travis had reached out last week. Monica, too. They had pitched a new direction for the company, said I was overwhelmed, that the business needed firmer hands. I thanked them, then asked if they remembered my dad's final shareholder letter, the one where he made clear I was his chosen successor. Both men smiled, said they did. That night, I changed the password to the shareholder portal. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting, not a regular update, a special assembly. I drafted the agenda myself, reviewed every clause in the bylaws, cross-checked what constituted a breach of fiduciary trust. Meanwhile, Travis bragged at dinner that things were calming down. He said he felt closer to me again. I told him I was trying to be more open. Monica invited me to a brunch with potential investors. She said I needed to start thinking big picture. I said I would consider it. I didn't. I met privately with the company's general counsel, presented my findings, the emails, the unauthorized communications, the side account flagged by the auditor. He asked if I was sure I wanted to go public with this. I said I wasn't just sure. I was ready. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them pay. It was about taking back what was mine before they sold it off piece by piece. I kept my face calm, my tone light. I let Travis believe he still had the upper hand, that I was starting to trust him again. I answered Monica's text with friendly emojis, asked for her thoughts on market strategy, thanked her for her insight. Every response was bait, every pause was timed, every move was a line in the playbook I was quietly rewriting. The meeting was set for Tuesday, 10 a.m. Conference Room B. I sent the invite with a polite subject line, quarterly check-in, operational review, and leadership alignment. Travis confirmed. Monica replied all. Neither of them saw it coming, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The room was set exactly how I wanted. Long table, bottled water, a muted screen ready for presentation. I arrived early, checked the projector, and waited. Travis walked in first, smiling like a man about to win something. Monica followed, heels sharp against the tile hair done too perfectly for a business meeting. They greeted me like friends sat across from me unaware. I thanked them both for coming, said I appreciated their support during such a difficult transition. Then I clicked the remote and played the first clip. The footage was grainy but clear. Monica inside my office rifling through drawers she had no reason to open. Her fingers paused on a locked file cabinet. She looked behind her, then tried the handle. Neither of them spoke. I let the video finish, then clicked to the next slide. Screenshots of emails filled the wall behind me. The subject lines were loud enough. Proxy strategy, timeline for restructure. Remove Rachel quietly. I turned the screen black, reached into my folder, and placed 3 documents side by side on the table. First, a formal petition for divorce. Second, my notice of intent to purchase controlling shares from 2 minority stakeholders. Third, a legal motion to bar Monica from all business dealings pending investigation. Travis stared, his jaw clenched, but no words came. Monica looked at the paperwork like it had teeth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for explanation. I just looked at them both, steady and silent. Then I stood, collected the folder, straightened my jacket. They thought they were pulling the strings, but I had been holding the whole board. Without another word, I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in weeks, the silence felt like mine. The divorce was quiet. Travis signed the papers without a fight. I think he knew he had nothing left to bargain with. He moved out a week later, left behind a few books, a sweater, and the silence of someone who had already given up. I didn't ask where he went. Monica's email account was deactivated that same afternoon. Her company badge was turned in by a courier. I didn't watch her go. I thought I would feel triumphant. I didn't. What I felt was stillness. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need it. I just wanted peace. The company steadied itself faster than I expected. My father had trained good people. They were waiting for leadership, not noise. I stepped into the role without needing to prove anything. I listened more than I spoke. I made decisions slowly, carefully. No one asked about Travis. No one missed Monica. The gossip faded as quickly as it began. I used a portion of the estate to set up a scholarship fund. My father's name sits quietly on a plaque now beside the word legacy. It felt right. He never asked for recognition, but he earned it. Every year, we fund 4 students' kids who remind me of where he came from. Practical, kind, determined. I read their letters sometimes. It helps. At home, I planted herbs in the backyard, took long walks around the lake in the morning, slept with the windows open again. I donated the lake house idea, bought books instead, started baking again. Nothing fancy, just enough to make the house smell like something warm. Some people called it a comeback. I never saw it that way. It was a return to myself, or maybe a version of myself I'd never been allowed to meet. There are still moments that sting. A song, a smell, an old voicemail from my dad I haven't deleted. But they don't undo me anymore. They remind me that I loved someone who was worth losing. I don't check Monica's social media. I don't wonder if Travis regrets anything. That part of the story is closed. Sometimes I sit by the window with coffee and just breathe. No noise, no tension, just me. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I chose. That's enough. And if someone asked me what strength looks like, I wouldn't talk about courtrooms or confrontation. I'd say it looks like walking away without needing to be seen. That's what I did. I walked away and I didn't look back. The morning light falls across my office desk, quiet and soft. It moves across the floor the same way it used to in my dad's office. Some things don't change even when everything else does. I sit with my coffee, watching it stretch over the walls and windows. It reminds me of the early days when he'd bring me to work, teach me how to read invoices, talk to people with calm eyes. He always said the most valuable thing you own is your name. And now sitting here, I understand what he meant. I didn't just protect his company. I protected what he believed in. They tried to turn grief into a gateway. They saw money and saw a shortcut. But I saw something else, a line I wouldn't cross. What I kept was not just wealth. I kept my place, my voice, my self-respect. It would have been easy to fall apart, to let their words shape me, but I chose a different kind of strength. Not loud, not angry, just steady, clear. The best revenge isn't making them pay. It's refusing to become them. Sometimes walking away with your dignity is the only win that matters. Sometimes healing quietly is the loudest answer. My father is gone, but his values aren't. I carry them with me and no one can take that. So if someone ever tries to make you feel small in the face of your own worth, ask yourself this: what would it cost you to stay silent? And if you've been through something like this, if you've had to choose yourself when no one else did, I'd love to hear your story.